Of course, yesterday, Donald Trump became the first former president to face a judge on federal charges. He pleaded not guilty to more than 36 felony counts tied to allegations he kept top secret documents, if I could talk this morning, after he left office and showed them to supporters. He's also facing criminal charges in New York tied to hush money payments to a porn star during his 2016 campaign. Of course, there was a lot to this indictment, so we are bringing in our legal analyst, Whitney Traylor, to help us break it down. Good morning, Whitney.
Good morning. Good to see you.
All right, so you read through this indictment. Yes. Tell us about your takeaways. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I read through the whole thing. It was a 49-page indictment. Unlike the indictment in Manhattan on the state court, it was very detailed. And they went through, and it really boils down to two or three things. One is the retention of classified documents that were improperly stored, the dissemination of some of that information. In fact, on one point, he showed a writer and a publisher a plan of attack as it related to our military, and he said, well, look, I didn't declassify it, so, this is private. He showed someone else, a representative of his PAC, a military operation, a map, and it was kind of odd. He said, don't stand too close to it. This is, top secret information type thing. So there's a lot of, so those kinds of things, sharing that with him. And then the biggest thing, and I think where he's really facing trouble, is the obstruction of justice, because in that situation, there's a number of according to the indictment, text messages and written messages and witnesses who are saying that he advised them to move the boxes. Then he went through some of them, took out some documents, had tried to have his lawyer lie. I mean, the allegations are really terrible.
So is that what we're going to be really hearing a lot about, the focusing beyond that obstruction of justice that you were talking about?
I think so. Both things. One is the retention of the documents, because it was the National Archives that had made months and months of requests, right, and he wouldn't turn them over. That's when he finally turned over some of the documents, they knew others were missing, and so that's when they involved the FBI. That's when the grand jury was convened. And so here, it's the obstruction of justice is probably the easier one to prove.
So how is this going to work going forward? Both, of course, the prosecution of these charges and then, if convicted, the sentencing phase of this whole case?
That's a great question. I mean, this is unprecedented. And in a way, I mean, the silver lining of this situation, I know it's divisive for the country, but the silver lining is that we are going to get some precedent. We're developing our body of law and how this works. And so there's going to be a lot of coordination with Secret Service, with prosecution. If he is convicted, I mean, these are serious felonies, up to 20 years on several of the counts. I don't know, especially if he were to win, I don't know how that would work, because he's entitled to that Secret Service detail. I mean, I guess it could be a house arrest, something like that, but your guess is as good as mine.
A question that a lot of legal analysts like yourself were having to answer yesterday when we were watching this all happen live was how this differs from what we saw with President Biden with the classified documents that were found in his home as well.
Yeah, I think there's some major differences. The two, and you could also include former Vice President Pence, who also had documents, but I think with both Pence and Biden, they both at times even volunteered, hey, we think we have some documents here. So they were completely cooperative. So here on the obstruction of justice, it wasn't just not cooperating, but it was actually trying to hide the documents and maintain them. So,
which goes back to the obstruction of justice that you were highlighting right there. Of course, so what happens next in this case? We had, he was charged, or we saw him in court yesterday for the first time. We obviously had extensive coverage of that, but where do we go from here? I know we don't know when a trial is going to happen, so what are we waiting for in the meantime?
Well, a traditional case, it's 6 months after the arraignment, and yesterday was the arraignment, so it would traditionally, because you're entitled to a speedy trial. Here, a lot of experts are saying they expect maybe a year, because there's going to be extensive motions, things like that. The case, the case in New York in March that he was also indicted for, the state case, that one they're expecting also a year. So that is expected to go to trial next March. This one then presumably would be next summer, depending on the motions and everything. But this is not the type of case that's going to settle. This is a case that's going to go to trial.
And we do know when it does go to trial that Trump's lawyers already said that they are going to ask for a speedy trial. At that, of course, we're going to have to keep following this very closely and have you back to answer more of those questions. But thank you for helping break this down, Whitney.
Sure
we
thing.
Appreciate it.